Hey, Jonathan. Happy Sunday. How y'all doing? Y'all doing okay? I hope y'all had a good Sunday. I hope you had a great Sunday worship service and got a great relevant word. I'm gonna sit down and talk to y'all for a minute. So, yesterday on my show, hey everybody. Um, Yesterday on my show, Jesus and Justice with Dr. Tiff, I talked about a couple of things, and I got a little bit rushed for running out of time. And I want you to share this message with as many people as possible because it's an important message that has been a myth, and particularly in the African American community for so long. And for the past week, I've been seeing this thing about Uncle Tom, and particularly since President Biden made his speech to Congress and Congressman Tim Scott made his speech, I have been seeing so many people, of course, talking about him, calling him an Uncle Tom. And I just want to educate people, and if this doesn't apply to you, if you know the meaning of an Uncle Tom, hi Leon, hey everybody, if you know the meaning of an Uncle Tom and this doesn't apply to you, I am by no means trying to insult your intelligence, but I just want to educate us because knowledge is power. I want us to know where the meaning Uncle Tom comes from, because the way I have been seeing Uncle Tom being used for so many years, and how I have been seeing it used by people that is educated, how I have even been seeing pastors use it on social media, it's really been making me cringe. So let me just tell you where Uncle Tom came from. Uncle Tom came from an 1852 novel from Harriet Beecher Stowe, Uncle Tom's Cabin. I want you to share this with as many people as possible, okay? And I promise you, I'm not gonna bore you. Please just stay with me. Please don't log off. I promise you, this is gonna be powerful. Please share this with as many people as powerful. I promise you, just give me 5 minutes. Please share this with as many people as possible. It's gonna bless your soul. Share this with as many people as possible. I promise you, Dr. Tiff is not gonna bore you. Uncle Tom came from an 1852 novel from Harriet Beecher Stowe, Uncle Tom's Cabin. It was based off a real person called Josiah Henson, who was a real slave. Josiah Henson was a slave who was separated from his parents. He, his wife, and his 4 kids escaped from Kentucky, walked all the way from Kentucky to Canada, 600 miles, okay? And what he did was he shared his story because his slave owner had promised him his freedom, but had cheated him out of his freedom. And his father had, the slave owner had cut off his father's ear for talking back to him, and had given his father one. What happened was, Josiah Henson went to Kentucky, walked all the way to Canada, and all he and his wife and his 4 kids had to guide them was the North Star. Now, check this out. The slave owner made Josiah Henson the overseer of the plantation, but because the slave owner had given him so many empty promises, he escaped and ran away to Canada. So when he got to Canada, he told his story, and that's when he met Harriet. That's when Harriet Beecher Stowe interviewed him. Now, when Josiah Henson got to Canada, he made several trips back to Kentucky and got some of the slaves and brought them back to Canada so they could have their freedom. Now, Harriet Beecher Stowe did a fictional book called Uncle Tom's Cabin. She didn't use his real name. She made his name unto Uncle Tom. Uncle Tom was a great person. He helped the slaves. Uncle Tom was he was a slave. He was the overseer of the plantation, and the slave owner was named Simon Legree. And everyone loved Uncle Tom. Uncle Tom, he looked after the slaves. When the slaves tried to escape, Uncle Tom never told on the slaves. When the slaves didn't have enough cotton in their baskets, Uncle Tom would give them some of his own cotton. And every night, check this out, because of the fact that everyone loved Uncle Tom, the slave owner had another black slave put over Uncle Tom named Sambo. Sambo was the actual snitch. Sambo was the actual person who would sell out his own brothers and sisters. And every night, the slave owner made Sambo beat Uncle Tom, okay? And at the end of the story of Uncle Tom's Cabin, the slave owner made Sambo kill Uncle Tom because Uncle Tom did not tell the slave owner where two female slaves escaped at, because Uncle Tom never told where the slaves escaped. He never told, he never ever tried to bring the slaves down. He always did whatever he could to lift up his black brothers and sisters. So for so long, African Americans have been fed these lies that an Uncle Tom is a person that is a sellout to the white man. I want you to stop going with this narrative, going by hearsay, and I want you to start researching things on your own. If you want to use a term for a person that is a sellout for their own brothers and sisters, the term is not an Uncle Tom. The term is a Sambo. Uncle Tom was a good person. Uncle Tom was a person that helped his brothers and sisters. The correct term is a Sambo. Everyone loved Uncle Tom. Uncle Tom helped his brothers and sisters. Uncle Tom was beaten to death by his own brother. And at the end of the story, Sambo knew what he did to Uncle Tom was wrong. And even on his deathbed, with tears in his eyes, Sambo apologized to Uncle Tom. And even on his deathbed, as a Christian man, Uncle Tom forgave him and then died. So I want to tell you, for so long we have been fed these lies and we have been going with this narrative. I want to tell you that knowledge is power. I want to tell you to read and research things on your own and stop going with this narrative. I too was fed these lies that an Uncle Tom was a sellout. It is not an Uncle Tom. And so I have been seeing where Tim Scott is an Uncle Tom. When you say that Tim Scott is an Uncle Tom, I understand that you're saying it in the context as an insult, but understand that when you're using it, you're actually giving him a compliment. So I want you to stop being a follower and being a leader and start researching things for yourself and stop going with what's popular and start being intelligent enough and start researching things on your own. Read Harriet Beecher Stowe. And the book was so powerful, my brothers and sisters, that if you were caught reading it back then when it was written in 1852, you would either be sent to prison or you would be sentenced to death. And it was so powerful that some say that it ignited the Civil War, that it ended slavery. It was so powerful that President Abraham Lincoln met with the author, Harriet Beecher Stowe, and he said to her, "You are the little lady that ignited the Civil War." So I want to just encourage you to stop going by what you have heard someone say and open up a book, research, because knowledge is power. One thing about it, they can try to take anything from you all they want to, but they can't take away your knowledge. They can't take away your education. And here's the other thing that I want to say to you that I said on my show yesterday. All this talk that people have been talking about with what Tim Scott said about America is not a racist country. And people ripped him to shreds, okay? And then the next day, when Vice President Kamala Harris was asked the question, was America a racist country? She agreed with him and said that America was not a racist country. And then when President Joe Biden was asked the question, he agreed and said that America was not a racist country. And then he also went on to say that the American people were not racist. I'm telling you today, on this beautiful Sunday evening, I don't know what country they live in. So we can play on words all we want to. We can maybe say that America is not racist. It has racist people, and I'm a little bit confused because, you know, President Biden and Vice President Harris, when they ran, their whole campaign was on racism. But what is not fair, we have to be very fair, especially if we're going to be brothers and sisters of Christ, is that you cannot condemn Senator Tim Scott for saying that America is not racist if you don't condemn Vice President Kamala Harris. And it should not matter if one is a Republican and one is a Democrat. They both said the same thing. It shouldn't matter if one is a brother and one is a sister. It shouldn't matter if one is a liberal and one is a conservative. They all said the same thing, that America is not a racist country. But no matter how you try to slice it and dice it, no matter how you try to go around it, America will never heal until you deal with the issues. And no matter how you try to be politically correct with it, America was built on racism. And until you deal with the issues, we can never move forward. And I don't understand why we are so uncomfortable dealing with the truth. The same people who are uncomfortable dealing with the truth have no issues talking about the black on black crime. They have no issues talking about how black people are thugs. They have no issues talking about the pregnancy rate and talking about the welfare and all of this of what the black community is doing. So why is it that we cannot, why are we so uncomfortable talking about racism? Racism happened. Slavery has happened. How are you so uncomfortable talking about slavery? This country was built on racism. Let's talk about slavery. Let's talk about how you had 10 presidents who were slave owners, from the first one to the third one who wrote the Declaration of Independence, who said that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Yes, it was actually built on classicism. You're actually right. But who has always been at the bottom? Black people. Black people have always been at the bottom. So no matter if you're talking about classicism, racism, black people have been at the bottom, from not just from America, but around the world. Black people have been oppressed since the end of time. And so no matter how we try to go around this thing, America was built on racism. When Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, when he said we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, he said that we were talking about white men only. When we go to 1857, Dred Scott versus Sanford, when Dred Scott tried to sue for his freedom, when his slave owner took him from a non-slave territory state to a free slave territory state, and when U.S. Supreme Court Justice Roger Taney said, and I quote, he said, no slave shall sue his slave owner. A. He said, B. He said, blacks were inferior beings. C. He said, blacks were not looked at as people, but as property. D. He echoed what Thomas Jefferson said. He said that when all men are created equal, that we were talking about white men only, period, bar none. And then let's go to 1896, when we go to Plessy versus Ferguson, New Orleans, Louisiana, when we talk about Homer Plessy, who was only 1/8 black, when they didn't even let the man ride in the railway trains because he was 1/8 black, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to say that America wasn't built on racism, when you wouldn't even let Homer Plessy ride in the railway trains because he was 1/8 black, but then you had separate but equal, then if America wasn't built on racism, why is it that you had the white schools? Why is it that you had the black schools? If America wasn't built on racism, why did we even have Jim Crow? If America wasn't built on racism, why did we have to ride to the back of the bus? If America wasn't built on racism, then why was Claudette Colvin arrested at 15 years old? If America wasn't built on racism, then why was Rosa Parks arrested? Because she refused to go to the back of the bus. So ladies and gentlemen, let's not play on words and say that that America was never built on racism. America will never heal until you deal with the issues. And so again, you cannot bash Senator Tim Scott for saying the same thing that Senator Kamala Harris said. And so when we talk about racism, the reality is it doesn't just start at the White House. This starts at home. You are not born a racist. You are taught to be a racist. You choose to be a racist. Period. Bar none. And all I'm saying to us is racism, this country, I cannot preach this enough. This country will not heal until you deal with the issues. Period. Yes, Tim Scott, what I don't understand is, one breath, Senator Tim Scott said how he has been racially profiled by the cops, but then he turned right back around and said that America is not racist. Okay, so if we want to play on words and say that America is not racist and it has racist people, okay, cool, that's fine. But the main thing that I wanted to tell you is that I want you to start researching things and find out things for yourself before you start repeating things. And a lot of times when we repeat things, it's not true. Sometimes when we repeat things that is not true. For so long, we've been calling people an Uncle Tom, and an Uncle Tom has actually been a great thing. And Uncle Tom is a compliment. And so it hurts my heart when we have been using Uncle Tom as a derogatory term when Uncle Tom was actually freeing slaves before Harriet Tubman was. He was bringing slaves, freeing slaves before the Underground Railroad, bringing slaves from Kentucky back to Canada before Harriet Tubman was. And so I just want to challenge us, my brothers and sisters, if you're going to call a person a sellout, erase the term Uncle Tom and change it to Sambo. And that's all that I want to tell you. If you have never read Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe, I challenge all of you to read it, because at one time they would not even allow us as African Americans to read Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin, because as I stated earlier, they would either put us in prison or sentence us to death. So knowledge is power. I didn't have time to really go over it yesterday on my show. I was being rushed. But because I'm so passionate about this and I educate my students, I really felt led to just get on air, to get on live for a few minutes to just tell you, if you've never read Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin, read it. It is such a powerful read. And I just want to tell you that, you know, we can disagree with people, but we don't have to trash people. And even though we may disagree with each other's policies, it doesn't mean that we have to assassinate a person's character. And as I said on my show yesterday, just because a person is African American and they may vote Republican, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are a sellout. There are many brilliant African Americans that are Republicans. I think Condoleezza Rice and Colin Powell are brilliant African Americans. And so I think that we have to articulate ourselves intelligently without always attacking each other. And so I just want us to just do better and love on each other a little bit better. All right? May God bless you is my prayer.